Hey everyone, if you're tired of hassling friends and family for fantasy league entry fees, try teamstake.com. Teamstake provides fantasy sports leagues with a fully customizable payment collection and payout distribution system at no charge. They've got safe and secure transactions, and again, it's completely free to use. Try teamstake.com. All right, let's talk some football. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I'm Bobby Sylvester with Mike Tagliere as always. And we're on Twitter at BobbyFantasyPro and at Mike Tagliere NFL. Tags, what's going on, man?
Can you feel it? We have exactly 1 week. From when we're recording this right now, next week, this time, I'm going to be looking forward, counting the hours down to Thursday Night Football. I cannot wait. And it seems like Carson Wentz is probably not going to play, but I'm still freaking psyched to watch some football, man.
I do feel it because I'm extremely busy. I went to sleep at 2 o'clock last night because I've got so much to do and it's fun. I'm not complaining whatsoever. This is the best job in the world. But yeah, man, it's been a grind and I'm looking forward to game starting.
Oh yeah, man. The grind is about to begin. This is the easy part, Bobby. Come on. The grind is coming.
Our guest today is always among the most accurate experts in our accuracy contests. He's actually been top 10 out of over 100 in 5 of the past 6 seasons. It's Justin Boone of theScore.com. You can find him on Twitter at his name, Justin Boone. Justin, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. I always like to bring up, too, that 6th season, I was 11th.
Oh, really?
So close to the top 10.
Oh, that's funny. I didn't know that. So yesterday on Twitter, Tags gave his Super Bowl prediction. Justin, I'm going to ask you for yours in a minute, then I'll share mine. But Tags, why don't you tell everyone what yours was?
Yeah, so mine was that I predicted the Saints. This is the time of year where obviously we have to plant our flags and say and not wait until we see teams in action, right? So it was the Saints versus the Jags in the Super Bowl, and I have the Saints winning that game 27-23. I think the Saints have told us everything that we need to know, that they're going for the Super Bowl this year, trading for Teddy Bridgewater yesterday after our show, which, by the way, Bobby, that was hilarious because you asked me who I'd rather have. You said Teddy Bridgewater or Deshaun Kaiser, and I was like, neither. I want the quarterback who's going to back up Drew Brees to the Saints draft next year.
Perfect.
So it worked out really well. But yeah, they're all in this year, and I actually believe that they have a talented enough team to make it there. So I'm all in on the Saints.
They're definitely talented enough. Yep, I agree. I like the Saints there. That's not who I picked. Justin, who do you have?
I have the Steelers over the Saints. I have the Saints in there as well. I think this is finally going to be the year for the Steelers. There's so much talent on that team, and I would love to see Antonio Brown might not be able to win a regular season MVP, but I'd love to see him take home the Super Bowl MVP.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. I've got the Green Bay Packers, and I know that's going to surprise a lot of people because their defense needs some work. But I just think Aaron Rodgers is that good that he can carry a team. I've got the Green Bay Packers over the Chargers, 38-28.
Nice.
What do you think about the Chargers? Because when I posted that, a lot of people were like, "Are you kidding me? The Chargers? They're terrible."
Chargers are good, man. They're just it's so many injuries. It's so many injuries they have on this defensive side of the ball. It just seems like every year, now Hunter Henry, Jason Verrett already down for the year, and it's just they could never catch a break. But they're a really good football team. The reason I wouldn't pick them is because they essentially don't have any home games because nobody shows up.
Yeah. You're right about that.
Somewhere along the line, they definitely wronged the football gods because, yeah, like you said, just terrible, terrible injury luck.
Yeah. Can we just all say, predictions are different than projections? If I was projecting who's the most likely Super Bowl team, it's the Patriots over the Eagles again. I mean, they're the 2 best teams, but you want to put your flag down, right? Like Tag said, and give your prediction, and that's what I'm going with.
That's what we got to do, man.
So here's the plan today. There was oddly a ton of news yesterday, so we need to cover that. And then we're going to get into a bunch of fun, quick-hitting segments where we're going to compile all the most important information to load you up before your drafts this weekend. So which players we want at each position, as well as the ones we're avoiding, then who to put on the bench, and finally some general draft strategy. Again, it's a ton, so we're going to go rapid fire. And before we get on to the news, we're going to be doing another live stream mock draft on YouTube against the listeners on Friday at 2 o'clock Eastern time. You can submit an entry to participate at fantasypros.com/mock draft, and you'll have a chance to win upgrades or extensions to our premium package. Or if you want to watch, you can check it out on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/fantasypros. And while you're there, check out all the new videos. Our new video guy is doing an awesome job.
Absolutely. And I look forward to mock drafting against you guys and beating Bobby again. I have a win streak of 2 right now, so suck it, Bobby.
Yeah, I mean, I have nothing to say. I got a D plus on the last one, and I'm just a big loser. Even though I had a 500 game winning streak or whatever it was before then, you know, you get a D plus, it just cancels everything, and like even more so, like Tags is the champ now. I want to talk about one of the sponsors of today's show, pristineauction.com. That's PRISTINE. And they're doing a giveaway for us right now where we're going to be giving away a signed David Johnson jersey to one of our listeners. We're picking on Friday night, so enter as soon as possible if you want a shot at this. If you enter now and miss out on this one, you'll get entered into all future giveaways for us for the rest of the year. All you have to do to enter, go to fantasypros.com/contest. It takes like 30 seconds. What we're doing is asking you to leave a review on iTunes and then, you know, submitting that to us just so we know that you did it. And we're going to draw one name, give them the signed David Johnson jersey, and it comes from Pristine Auction where everything is guaranteed from only the most trusted sources. They've got hundreds of lots to end daily. And frankly, you're going to be surprised just how cheap some of this stuff is. Like, listen to some of the stuff that ended yesterday. I saw a HaHa Clinton Dix signed Packers jersey for $73. I saw a framed Dick Butkus jersey that's signed for $150. It would look beautiful in your cave if you're a Bears fan. And a signed Christian Okoye Chiefs jersey for just $38. It was a really great value. And you see stuff like this every day. If you're paying attention, you can get some absolute steals on there. There's signed helmets, something for a fan of every team. Take a look at pristineauction.com. Again, that's PRISTINE. And when you buy something, make sure to let them know Fantasy Pro sent you. Okay, so news. You talked about Teddy Bridgewater being traded. I mean, it doesn't really matter that much for fantasy, but for dynasty leagues, just want to let y'all know that happened. It's a perfect situation for New Orleans. I mean, how long do you think Drew Brees is going to play in the league, Justin?
I mean, I think he's definitely going to have a couple more years here, but as a Mike Thomas owner, I actually own Mike Thomas in the Fantasy Pros Dynasty League, and I was very excited to see that happen. Bridgewater's the guy. There was worry. There was legitimate concern with some of those stars in New Orleans, whether they were going to be able to keep it up once Brees was gone. I think this gives us a lot of hope that they're going to be able to.
I don't even know if Bridgewater's really going to be around to replace Brees when it happens. I mean, it could be 4 or 5 years with the way that he's going. He just had his most efficient season of all time, right? I think this is more so like hey, get the best possible backup quarterback. And I think that might be Teddy Bridgewater at this point.
Yeah, and Teddy's on a 1-year deal. I'm interested to see if they extend him, like now that they have him on their team, if they try and work out a long-term deal, because it was just a 1-year deal with the Jets, so.
Yeah. Or maybe he can just go to Jacksonville next year. That would make me happy.
That'll be very telling. I think the Saints are going to extend him, though. They have no clear-cut backup plan to Drew Brees right now.
All right, let's talk about this Le'Veon Bell holdout, because I'm starting to come around to the idea that drafting James Conner, I've been getting him in the 15th in almost every draft, but drafting him a little earlier, like in the 13th, just to make sure I have him, makes sense because I think Le'Veon Bell might actually hold out. What do you think, Justin? Is he coming back this weekend like everyone's saying?
He's going to show up. There's no way he's going to pass on that money. He is going to show up. It's going to be just like last year. I'm not concerned about him actually showing up. I think the bigger worry will be once he's back, is he going to suffer a hamstring injury, some sort of soft tissue injury like that? We saw Josh Gordon after his layoff. He came back right away, got sidelined. I think that's possible, and I think that's a reason why you should be looking at Connor. And I'm still touting Jalen Samuels as a guy that I'm stashing on my bench in some places because I know on Yahoo and a couple other spots, he has tight end eligibility.
Oh, that would be incredible.
And if you could ever get the Steelers starter, Connor is the backup, no doubt. But there's a possibility that we could end up with Samuels in there at some point this season. And yeah, if you could have a starting running back, especially the Steelers starting running back as your tight end, massive value.
If Jalen Samuels, if we find out Le'Veon Bell and James Conner tore their ACL, would Jalen Samuels be the tight end 1 in fantasy drafts tomorrow?
No, they'd sign a running back.
Yeah, they would, but Jalen Samuels would be a workhorse in Pittsburgh. I think the answer is yes.
I'm not willing to trust him yet. I think he's a fine player. I just don't think that he's like an every down running back like some people have suggested. James Conner has looked fantastic, though, by the way. I do want to say that. James Conner, I was actually watching some of that other game against the Titans this morning, and he's running with a purpose, man. Like that.
He's almost as good as John Kelly.
He's a better runner than John Kelly.
I know people are going to think I'm making a joke. I'm really not. John Kelly's incredible. James Conner is like right behind him.
Yeah, no, yeah. Le'Veon Bell showing up. We don't even need to talk about this.
So there might be some big trades here. Randall Cobb is available. Someone said, some GM said every GM knows that Randall Cobb is available. And Khalil Mack up for trade. Now, the second one doesn't matter so much, but it's interesting. They're asking for 2 firsts, which I think is a good value. I want to talk about this Randall Cobb situation, though. We know he's got the foot issue. Now, he's their clear-cut number 2 wide receiver. So what does this tell us? Does this tell us that they love Equanimeous St. Brown? Is it that they love Geronimo Allison? They trust all these guys, or they just think Cobb is washed up? What do you think, Justin?
I think they are getting to the point where they probably think Cobb is washed, or at least we've seen the best of Cobb at this point. I don't know that he's going to get traded. I think there is a possibility they could cut him here. It's affecting his ADP. I haven't checked it today, but it's definitely been dropping. And he's a guy that I'm not really that interested in touching. If he falls a round or two here, maybe you throw him on your bench and see what happens. Because as we know, every aspect of that Packers offense is valuable in fantasy. But a guy that I'm not as interested in now with all these reports.
What do you think, Tags? I've seen Randall Cobb, just in my rankings alone, tumble from 25 to 37 in the past 3 weeks.
Well, I mean, I've talked about it before, and people that, and like pass catchers that have off-season ankle or foot surgery on the same calendar year, I'm concerned about them, and knowing that he's had to miss practice time because of it. I mean, the Packers can try and hide it all they want. You know, they just extended Aaron Rodgers. Some people have said that they were trying to trade him to make some room for the salary cap because they would take a cap hit. So there's a lot of questions surrounding this. I mean, I don't think that they have a clear-cut solution to Randall Cobb right now. So unless there's someone out there they're targeting that they're like, oh, we feel really good about bringing this guy in, I don't see them cutting him, but it's definitely something we're going to pay attention to.
Yep, absolutely.
Of those rookies that they have there, I think Valdez-Scantling is probably the most exciting. I think the speed that he could bring to that offense would be pretty interesting if he gets the nod there.
I'm interested in Kumaro, and I know he's a really deep guy. He's hurt right now, but he was so good in preseason, and Aaron Rodgers has just raved about this guy.
He's the new Jeff Janis, dude.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. I stashed him in a Dynasty League just in case. He's one to keep an eye on for the waiver wire, in my opinion. All right, guys. Finally, I want to talk about this Aaron Rodgers contract. $100 million guaranteed. That's like, if that was baseball money, he'd be like a number 4 starting pitcher.
It wasn't even enough. He deserves more.
I agree. It's not enough.
I'm just kidding.
What do you think, Justin?
Money-wise, yeah. I mean, that's not really my area of expertise. It doesn't affect fantasy all that much. It's nice that he'll be happy, so that's a good thing. We want a happy and healthy Aaron Rodgers on the field. So I'm glad that he got paid. Yeah, it would be nice to see the NFL salaries go even higher. I know people were comparing them to some of the other leagues that he got, Kyle Lowry money from the NBA. And, it's kind of unfortunate, but
Jordan Zimmerman money in baseball. Most people don't even know who that is, but yeah.
Way more games in those other sports. So I guess you can understand it from that aspect, but it's nice to see these guys get paid, and I think it's well deserved.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I'm glad that football's going that direction and paying their stars. All right, guys, so here's the plan. Like I said, we're just going to blitz through this and give our, the players that we want. And this is based on where they're going ADP. Like, obviously, everyone could say, I want Aaron Rodgers as my ADP. But, like, I don't know, most people probably aren't going to spend the 3rd-round pick it would take to get him. So this is based on your ADP. So we'll maybe give 1 or 2 quarterbacks, 1 or 2 that we're avoiding at the position, then we'll move on to the next position. Tags, I'm going to let you start here. Who are the 1 or 2 quarterbacks that you are keying in on for your drafts?
Yeah, I found myself targeting Drew Brees more often. I feel like he could make his way back into the top 5 quarterback conversation, and he's not being drafted as such. Like, I've got him as like the 7th or 8th quarterback a lot of times. Some people are taking him, Kirk Cousins over him. So Drew Brees, I think, is a fantastic value. And the other one that we've talked about on the show, is Alex Smith. Alex Smith going to an offense where he's going to be required to throw the ball a lot more. And I did an Alex Smith profile just a couple weeks ago talking about why Alex Smith may have had that game manager reputation, and it might have had to do with the teams that he played for, because every single defense, every team that he played for over the past, over his career has been a top 16 defense, and almost every year they're top 8.
Great running game too.
Yeah, exactly. So there was a lot of circumstances that led to that. So when you see the Chiefs defense taking a downturn last year, I think that's why things had to open up for Alex Smith a little bit, and you saw that he was up to the task. So those are the 2 quarterbacks I find myself wanting in fantasy leagues. Like, if you were waiting a long time, Alex Smith. But if you're like, I'm uncomfortable going the streaming approach, I think Drew Brees will be just fine.
Yeah, I like both those guys. I've got Alex Smith in a lot of leagues. He's not going to make my top 2 here, but I've got him like 10 spots ahead of everyone else. Justin, who are your 1 or 2 guys?
Well, I'm going with Alex Smith's former backup, Patrick Mahomes. I tend to, in drafts this year, from what I'm seeing, around the 9th, 10th, 11th, for me, seems to be the sweet spot to grab quarterbacks. I really like the values in there with Stafford and Roethlisberger, Patrick Mahomes. Even Andrew Luck you can get in that range. So Mahomes, we've talked about him a million times over the offseason. I think everyone sees him as a big-time breakout candidate. I think he has top 5 upside even this year. I know we're looking forward with him, but even this year with all those weapons, there's going to be some mistakes. There are going to be more interceptions than Alex Smith ever threw there, I'm sure. But like Tags mentioned, the defense in Kansas City has taken a downturn, and that is going to put them in more shootouts, and that is going to be exciting for fantasy owners. So Mahomes is somebody I really like. Roethlisberger, who I mentioned, is another guy I'm getting on a lot of teams. Another guy with an amazing cast around him. Last year, he was the QB2 overall, second most fantasy points among quarterbacks from week 7 on. Like, that's huge. That people don't, I think everybody looks at Roethlisberger and thinks, well, he gets banged up and he's going to miss time. He's played the majority of games. He had a, 12 game season, I think 3 years ago. He's missed 2 games a couple years ago, 1 game last year. So he's been fairly healthy, and his home road splits evened out a little bit last year. That was a big concern before with him. So I'm more than happy to make either of those guys my starting quarterback in, like I said, the 9th, 10th round is when they're available.
Justin, here's my question to you, though. Like, I don't want to draft Mahomes because you'd have to draft a second quarterback because he does play the Chargers in week 1 in LA. That's not a great matchup. And then obviously you have the Broncos in Denver in week 4 and then the Jags in week 5. It's like his schedule to start the year is brutal, where I think after that Jags game, you might be able to get him off the waiver wire. You might be able to trade for him on the cheap if you wanted to, but he's like one of those guys I'm probably avoiding as a draft target.
I would be surprised if people gave up on him that early in the season. One of the things I like about getting a guy in this range, it's quarterback. If it doesn't work out, I'm not taking a second quarterback normally. If it doesn't work out, then heck, in week 2, I'll grab Jameis Winston, who's coming back in a week or 2 after that. There's going to be guys in the waiver where I think Alex Smith's a guy that's probably not even going to get drafted in most leagues, is my guess. You can get somebody like that off the waiver wire. So in most cases, I think you're going to be okay, even if the worst case scenario happens, if a Roethlisberger got hurt or Mahomes doesn't turn out to be what you want. I'm not that scared of starting him in some of these tough matchups, though. I think that offense has the talent to overcome it.
I'm scared. I'm really scared. He looks awful in the preseason. I've moved him up in my rankings quite a bit. I'm still not getting any shares just because there's guys I like more than him. Matt Ryan is one of them, and I don't have a ton of shares of Matt Ryan because it's like I'm either getting Andrew Luck, who, I mean, if he's healthy, yeah, we've got a top 3 quarterback, right? I mean, he had 356 fantasy points the last time he was healthy for a full season. That's top 10 all time. We're talking about historically good, so you know what? Same thing. If he's not healthy, if he doesn't perform up to snuff, you just cut him and you pick up an Alex Smith. I love Alex Smith, but the other guy, the guy that I actually have the most shares of, is Dak Prescott. The reason why I've given this stat a couple times is that when Dak Prescott plays in the lineup with Ezekiel Elliott, there's been 23 games. In those 23 games, he is the number 1 fantasy quarterback. Everyone thought he was horrible last year. He finished as the number 10 fantasy quarterback without his offensive line, without Zeke. He was still fine. And in week 1, he gets Carolina. I like to play the streaming game at quarterback unless I get Aaron Rodgers or Drew Brees or Russell Wilson. Dak Prescott's the streamer in week 1. He gets Carolina, and their pass defense is just dreadful.
But that's the thing. So you talked about the offensive line and why he struggled down the stretch, but Travis Frederick, their starting center, their Pro Bowl starting center, it seems like he might be placed in the PUP list.
It's different than Tyron Smith, man. Tyron Smith is the single best offensive lineman in the game, and when he's gone, it's a big deal.
It's different, but it doesn't help, and he also has Allen Hurns and Terrence Williams as his starting wide receivers. Like, I could see streaming Dak in a good matchup or 2, but counting on him as, like, a guy that could potentially be an every week starting quarterback, I can't get on board with. Like, I'd rather take Trubisky, if I'm being honest with you.
That's nuts, dude. That is so crazy. We're talking about the guy who has been a top 5 fantasy quarterback over the last 2 years, and somebody who was mediocre at best last year. I understand he got upgrades, but like we are hoping Mitch Trubisky is half of what Dak Prescott is. And he probably will be, but we're hoping for that. I can't see that, dude.
Justin, is he on crack or am I on crack?
My concern with Prescott is just the upside, and it's fantasy upside. I get it. He has performed well so far. Overall talent, we're talking about the tools that you need to be an elite quarterback in the league. I don't think Prescott really has them. I think he's performed very well in the system. I think they kept it very simple for him as a rookie, which I think is very smart for most rookies. I don't know that he's going to be able, especially with those weapons, to continue to take it to the next level, to establish himself as an elite option. That's why I think a guy like Mahomes, we know he has the skills if he can put it together, and he has the weapons around him, much more enticing to me than somebody like Prescott, who it just seems like there's too many concerns now. And with the offensive line, which I think the offensive line is the best weapon that offense has, and with that offensive line not being 100%, it's very worrisome for me. So Prescott's not someone I'm going after.
I disagree about the weapons. I think that accuracy is a much more important weapon than a cannon like Josh Allen or Pat Mahomes. And Prescott, I mean, he just gets it done. I don't think the weapons on his receiving core is as bad as last season. I mean, Des Bryant was nothing. That's why nobody wants him. Jason Witten was a grandpa. He still is a grandpa. I don't think that they're replacing that much. I think he's going to be fine. Remember, going into week 10 last year when Zeke's suspension started, Dak Prescott was the number 3 fantasy quarterback.
You can stand on that hill. It's fine.
Yeah, I will. I am dying. I'm going to be living on that hill because there's no dying. I've got Dak Prescott in week 1 against Carolina, week 2 against the Giants. And then from there, we'll see what happens. Okay, so who are you guys avoiding at quarterback? For me, I've been saying it all year. It's Carson Wentz. No chance I'm drafting a guy who's going to set out at least the first 2 weeks. Severe touchdown regression. And then Deshaun Watson, who has so many red flags. I won't even get into it because the show will end by the time I'm done.
Yeah, Justin, who are your quarterbacks you're avoiding?
The show would end by the time you're done because I would be arguing with you the whole time because...
Oh, no!
I don't like him at his ADP, but it's a weird situation because a lot of the drafts that we do, a lot of the mocks were analysts from around the industry. Quarterbacks go later. In a lot of the, I would say, more skilled fantasy leagues that I'm in, quarterbacks go later. So someone like Watson, you can get them in the 5th or 6th. I agree that in the 3rd or 4th where he's been going, that's a silly price to pay. But I am very willing to take him in the 5th and 6th, but we won't go too far into that.
Well, let's do it. Let's do it a little bit because, there's a lot of new people listening who haven't heard these arguments, and I want them to hear both sides, right? First of all, if you're new to listening or new to fantasy football, ADP means average draft position. So what Justin's talking about, Deshaun Watson is the 2nd quarterback off the board. If you look at ECR, which is expert consensus rankings, all the experts in the industry combined together, they've got Watson as the QB5. Now, Justin's talking about if Watson falls to the 5th or 6th, that's a value. I wouldn't take him in the 10th round if he was there. But Justin, why don't you give your pitch on why you like Watson?
We saw the upside, and everyone is so hung up on he's going to regress. Well, of course he's going to regress. He's not going to continue to perform at a historic level like that. But even if he regresses to 70 or 80% of what he did last year, he was so far ahead of the pack. Another guy that has very strong weapons around him. I like, obviously Hopkins, one of the best receivers in the league. Will Fuller's great. I'm excited about, Bruce Ellington and Kiki Kuti. I like both those guys as receivers. I think Lamar Miller's going to he's a guy we're probably going to talk about later when we get to running backs. I think he's going to have a bounce back season. And I am looking at fantasy as something I want to enjoy, and I enjoyed owning Watson last year. You are allowed to have fun in this, and we talked about it. As long as you're not investing too high of a pick, as long as the draft capital going in isn't too high, you can easily make up for it if Watson turns out to be a bust. I don't think it's going to happen, but you can easily find someone else to back him up. I think this year, I would be shocked if Watson isn't a top 5 quarterback. I think regression is coming, like I said, but he can easily still be a great quarterback and not perform at the insanely high levels he was going last year.
Yeah, everyone knows regression's coming. There's no doubt about that, but just how much? Let me just say this. Conservatively, let's say that his touchdown rate regresses to Tom Brady's career average. Let's say Deshaun Watson is as good as Tom Brady. I think that's kind of crazy, but just to be conservative, 5.5% touchdown rate from 9.3. We're looking at someone who threw 11 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, and in that time, a small 5-week sample size, which, mind you, Blake Bortles was the number 1 fantasy quarterback for a 5-week sample size. I don't like these small sample sizes, plus it was against rough defenses. Deshaun Watson would have been the quarterback 7 in that time with those stats. That's really scary. If he has Tom Brady's touchdown rate, plus he's coming off a major surgery, he's got the worst offensive line in the league. I have Deshaun Watson in 0 leagues. If he dropped to the 10th, like I said, I wouldn't take him. Tags, what do you think, man?
I mean, I've told you before that I'm not a Watson guy. I'm not drafting him where he's been going, but I'm with Justin in the fact that, I've said on the show before that he still came back as top 6 in my projections because even if you factor in regression, he's still going to run. And I know the ACL, it could limit his mobility, but from all we've been hearing is that he looks just like the same quarterback. It's his 2nd ACL, so he obviously knows what it feels like to come back from this injury. He's gotten over the mental portion before. But yeah, fantasy is a different thing than real life, right? And I don't think Deshaun Watson's a top 6 NFL quarterback, but for fantasy purposes, I would be shocked to see, if he played all 16 games, I would absolutely be shocked to see him not finish top 6 just because of what he offers in the ground game. Like, Cam Newton's not a good passer. He's never going to throw for a whole bunch of touchdowns, but he's going to finish as a top 6 quarterback just because of what he offers on the ground. So I'm kind of in the middle here, and I hate to say that, but I won't own any Watson because he doesn't fall to where I would feel comfortable. I would rather take Drew Brees.
Okay.
I know everyone has different metrics when it comes to strength of schedule, fantasy strength of schedule. For me, I think the Texans have a super easy schedule. I have them as the 4th easiest quarterback schedule this year. And if you just rattle off quickly some of the teams they're going against, tough game probably against the Patriots in week 1, Tennessee in week 2, better defense. But they have the Giants, the Colts, Cowboys, the Bills, who just looked terrible in that last. The Bengals just did whatever they want against their first string defense.
Fantasy playoffs, he's got the Colts and the Jets.
Exactly. There's Miami in there on the schedule. So, Washington, there's a lot of easy matchups. So I think that's going to help him too for everyone that thinks the regression is coming. And we all agree on that. But another easy schedule he's going to be able to take advantage of.
Yep. All right, so who are you avoiding then, Justin, at quarterback?
One of the main guys, I've gotten a lot of flack for this, is Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah.
I don't understand why he's going as high as he is. He's a guy. Is it just handsomeness? Is that what everyone just wants to own the new handsome quarterback? I don't get it. I don't understand it at all. I know he performed fairly well down the stretch last year, but his touchdown numbers were not where I'd want them to be at all. And I think he's going to have a chance to take another step here, but where he's going to draft him as a top 10 quarterback seems outrageous to me.
Do you think that Bill Belichick just drafts handsome quarterbacks on purpose? Like, does he know something like handsome quarterbacks are better?
Tom Brady when he was drafted, he wasn't as good looking as he is now. No, seriously, if you look at Tom Brady when he's younger at the combine, he looks like just like an average Joe. Now he's like all taken care of. He's all GQ'd up. He gets dressed up in the nice suits. Like, he looked like an average Joe when he was drafted.
I just looked up Danny Etling because that's who they drafted this year just to see if that was Bill Belichick's thing. He's a normal guy.
As a Bills fan, it's always nice to go back and watch that video of Brady at the combine where he's wearing that T-shirt, looking very sloppy. That was probably his low point in the NFL, yeah.
So, Tags, who are you avoiding at quarterback then?
So the players that I'm avoiding, we've kind of already hit on Deshaun Watson. Another one is like Derek Carr. Like, don't draft Derek Carr, guys. Like, I can throw so many stats out there on why Derek Carr is a bad quarterback, like in terms of his consistency. He just hasn't been nearly as consistent as he should have been, considering who he's had to throw to. Like, having Amari Cooper and Michael Crabtree as your 1-2, like, that's a problem in the fact that he's been like a QB1 just like 35% of the time in his career, and yet some people believe that there's like a breakout year. He was drafted as a QB1 last year, even though going back to his pre-back injury days in 2016, he was not a consistent quarterback. So don't even think about drafting Derek Carr in a one quarterback league. You could stream him in good matchups if he looks good under Gruden, but he's someone that doesn't deserve to get drafted.
All right, guys, let's go to starting running backs. And Justin, we're going to let you start here. Maybe 3 or 4 guys that you are targeting, would love to get at their ADP.
I'm going to go with my first guy here, Alex Collins. He's going off the board in the 3rd round. That's still a high price to pay, but I think that he is rock solid as a top 15 fantasy running back this year. He saw 17 touches, at least 17 touches in the Ravens' last 7 games in last season. And he was the RB9 in fantasy during that stretch. I think he locked down that job late last year, and I don't think people are giving him credit for it. I think people still kind of think that Kenneth Dixon's going to be involved and Buck Allen's going to steal touches, and Buck Allen will get some passing down work for sure. But I think that offense is going to be okay this year, and I think they're really going to lean on the run, as always.
Are you worried about the fumbles?
With Collins, I don't see who's going to come in. I don't know who they're going to then turn it over to. Are they really going to bench Collins, who has performed very well last year, like we just said, in favor of a Buck Allen? I just can't.
We're struggling Dixon. No. I mean, Adrian Peterson fumbles the ball too. I'm not worried about Collins. I just wanted to throw that out there in case anyone else was.
No, it's a fair point. It's a fair point.
Would you take Collins over McKinnon, LaShawn McCoy?
I would definitely take him over McCoy. McCoy's someone that I'm avoiding almost entirely unless he falls several rounds. I really don't like that situation. Even if he doesn't get suspended, I don't want a guy in that sort of situation at that age. That offensive line has looked so bad. It's going to just completely destroy that offense.
I mean, the Bills are going to score like 4 touchdowns all season, so.
It seems like it. And for as, hopeful as we saw some glimpses from Josh Allen during the preseason, we've also seen offensive lines completely destroy an entire offense. And I think that's what's going to happen in Buffalo. Any chance that they had. McCoy was fortunate to be running behind a line that had Cordy Glenn and Incognito. Those guys are gone. The left side of that line that was so strong that really helped that running game. they are all gone. So I'm very worried.
Tyrod's gone too.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
By the way, Tyrod said that his name was pronounced Tyrod the other day after trolling us.
Yeah, we're going to stick with Tyrod. I'm not dealing with this. Like, his parents say it's Tyrod, and then he said it's Tyrod when he introduced himself on the interview, so we're not even going to attack that.
Yeah, we went back and forth on our most recent podcast with that one, and yeah, it's a little tricky. I think it's probably best just to stick with Tyrod.
All right, Justin, why don't you give us 2, maybe 4 names really quick, and then we'll move on to tags.
All right, Jay Ajayi playing in a great offense. I know I might get some flack for that one too. He's already hurt. He missed a week. People are worried that Corey Clement's going to be involved, Darren Sproles is going to be involved. I think that's going to happen, but with LeGarrette Blount gone, I think Ajayi's going to get more work at the goal line. I think he's definitely in for some positive TD regression there. And if Foles has to start some games early in the season, makes a lot of sense that they're going to lean on that running game a little more. So I think he could get off to a good start to the year, assuming he's healthy. Lamar Miller, guy I mentioned before when we were talking about Watson, definitely think big time upside there. I was working on my bold predictions article yesterday, and I was debating what to put for Miller because I really wanted to put him in there. And I think the bold prediction is just going to be that he wins back fantasy owners this year. Everyone is so frustrated and angry with him after the last couple of years. I think he's going to win everyone back. And we saw he was a low-end RB1 during Watson's starts in the first half of the year there. So he has a chance. Offensive line, a little worrisome, but I think with Watson back there, you can overcome that and has very little competition with Foreman going on PUP. 2 other guys, they're teammates. I like where they're going, though. It's Burkhead and it's Sony Michel.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah, they're both going in the 6th round on Fantasy Pros consensus ADP, and I like them both there. The Patriots rushing attack, we know how good it's been. Last 2 years, it's been very dominant, and I think there's a strong chance that we could see both these guys end up as top 24 backs. Michel missed a lot of the preseason. Those are pretty valuable reps, so it might take him a few weeks here at the beginning of the year to get going, but they're both extremely versatile. Belichick loves that. He wants guys on the field that the defense isn't going to be able to guess what they're doing. They're not going to be able to know. It's not a LeGarrette Blount situation where you know he's going to run the ball and not catch it. So I think both those guys have upside. They can do it all.
Tags, which names do you want to go with here? Starting running backs that you're targeting. Like, obviously, everyone would love to get Le'Veon Bell, Melvin Gordon, but it depends on where you pick in the first round. So who are some guys after that?
Yeah, no, so Lamar Miller, Sony Michel, Rex Burkhead were all on my list of running backs. I love at their cost. Sony Michel I've gotten in the 8th round recently, and it's kind of crazy. I don't know if your league is sleeping on him. Don't let them do that. I think if you have Sony Michel and Rex Burkhead on your team, I think they're both starter worthy every single week. And the fact that, I like that Justin mentioned that Sony missed some of those preseason reps. I don't think the Patriots can afford to bench him. I don't think that they can afford to keep him on the bench with all the options they're missing. They don't have a number 2 or number 3 receiver. It's kind of like mix and match between Phillip Dorsett, Cordarrelle Patterson. I mean, until Julian Edelman comes back, they're going to be using Burkhead and James White out of the slot an awful lot, which means Sony Michel is going to be in the backfield an awful lot. They will not be predictable. So I love those calls. Lamar Miller with Deshaun Watson back there obviously played better there. And 2 other running backs that I'm targeting, Joe Mixon. I've said it before, I'll say it again. The talent level is Le'Veon Bell-esque. I'm not saying he's as talented as Le'Veon Bell, but I'm saying that's the type of running back that he is. Just happens to be on a lesser offense. If Joe Mixon was in the Steelers offense, I would draft him as a top 5 running back. If Le'Veon Bell was on the Bengals, I'd probably draft him around where I'm taking Joe Mixon. So I like Joe Mixon as a potential breakout star if that Bengals offense can get back on track, get their plays per game up. And Carlos Hyde in the 7th round, I mean, he's moving up. Like I've seen him go as high as the 5th round now. So Carlos Hyde was someone that was on this list for me, and unfortunately people have started to catch on that he's the starting running back for the Browns. So with Tyrod Taylor there, with a better offensive line than he played with in San Francisco, Carlos Hyde is worth his cost right now.
For me, it's really different this year. Like, usually I'm like, I want to load up on running backs really early because there's no one I can trust later. There's a bunch of question marks. I've got like 6 or 7 guys in the middle rounds that I would be just happy having. So I want one of the top 12 running backs, which in my mind goes, at the end, you've got Kareem Hunt, Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, and then Joe Mixon. If I can get one of the top 12 guys, I'll be happy. Then I want 3 of the names I'm about to give. Kenyon Drake. Adam Gase is saying that he's going to be a workhorse, like 20 touches a game. That would be unbelievable. Kenyon Drake is really talented. Lamar Miller, I'm getting one of those 2 guys in the, late 3rd, early 4th. And a couple weeks ago, I would have felt upset about it or just disgusting. But like, these guys are going to get enough touches that you can rely on them. Mark Ingram, I know I'm not going to use him right away. But again, if I get one of the top 12 and then 3 of these guys that I'm about to mention, then, Ingram's going to be just fine. He'll be my fourth running back. Then when he comes back, he's my stud RB2. Marshawn Lynch, he's actually the number one guy that I most want. We've had a bunch of experts come on say the same exact thing. He's their number one target in drafts because of where he's going. He's a workhorse. He was really good at the end of last year. Oakland improved their offensive line. And then Carlos Hyde, Sony Michel, Jamal Williams. I wouldn't really be comfortable with Chris Carson starting for him, but he's a guy I'm targeting as well.
Yeah. I mean, I'm okay with a lot of those names. Like, I don't think some of them are going to be like league winners in terms of like, just because they're going to have crazy blowout performances. But if you want to go wide receiver heavy and you want to attack some of those running backs in the later rounds, they're safe plays. Like Marshawn Lynch looked really good in the preseason. And if you really want to handcuff him, Doug Martin, you can get with your final pick. So, I mean, I have no issue with any of those players if you want to go wide receiver heavy in your draft.
The running back league winners are the guys that are on the bench. And we're going to talk about them in a minute. Justin, did you want to fight me on any of these guys first, though?
No, I think all those guys are targets that I'm willing to. Ingram's a guy that I'm kind of staying away from a bit, but if you look at someone like, you could pair him with like an Adrian Peterson, who I think will be okay at the start of the year. I just don't think he'll last. You're probably going to get decent production for the first few weeks out of Peterson, and then you'll have Ingram back so he can take over.
If Ingram is your RB2 or even your RB3, it's not a good plan, but if you can get 4 solid running backs, I really like to get him in that situation because there's so many good wide receivers you can get later. I don't mind waiting on them a little bit.
Can I give a point to that, Bobby? Because I was in a draft last night. It was a Chicago media draft that I was in, and Mark Ingram was on the board in like, I think it was the end of the 6th round or beginning of the 7th. It's a super flex, so it was different, but we started 2 running backs, 3 receivers, and 3 flex spots. So I legitimately couldn't justify taking Mark Ingram, even as like the 24th running back off the board, because you have to understand like your starting rosters. If you only start like 2 running backs, 2 receivers, 1 flex, Mark Ingram's worth a whole lot more because you can find production on your bench for those couple weeks. If you're playing in a deep league where you're starting, the 3 wide receivers, you're starting multiple flex, it becomes a lot tougher to draft Mark Ingram because your bench players they are what they are. They're bench players. They're there in case of an emergency. And I don't think you could find production in deeper leagues. So that's why I just wanted to clarify that, because I ran into that exact situation last night and I wanted to draft Ingram, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it because of the deep starting rosters.
One thing I think that people aren't talking about enough, and like I said, I'm not that high on Ingram, but people don't seem to be talking about what happens if Kamara gets hurt here, right? Like Kamara's probably going to get a few extra touches early in the season, and if he breaks down, Ingram could be coming back to a significant workload if that happens.
Or Jonathan Williams just turns into a monster because he's good and he's in Ingram's role now too. Because Ingram can catch passes. Maybe they would slide Ingram over to Kamara's role. Just whoever's running the Saints offense. Even if it's Tim Hightower, give him to me. Even if Christine Michael ends up there, give him to me.
No, don't do that.
Yeah. If there's I'm looking at these running backs, guys, and, there's people I'm not getting like Kareem Hunt, Dalvin Cook, because there's just guys in that range I like more, like Christian McCaffrey and Joe Mixon. I'm not getting any Kamara because I like Melvin Gordon and Leonard Fournette more. But there's no one I'm really avoiding. Maybe Derrick Henry. I think he's going too high. Obviously guys like Rashad Penny, who lost his job, Ronald Jones. I'm not getting many shares of them. I don't really have anyone I'm avoiding besides Isaiah Crowell. Justin, who are you avoiding?
Crowell's on that list. McCoy, who I mentioned earlier. Ronald Jones, people need to just realize that Ronald Jones is not good. I don't know that it's going to happen for him. They've even been giving Jacquizz Rodgers some of the passing down work because Sims is on IR now. And I worry that we know that Jones is not that great of a pass catcher. People might think because he caught that one long pass in the preseason that he's going to get more work there. He's not really good. He wasn't good in college at catching passes. I don't think that he has a role in this team unless someone breaks down. And even then, I don't know that he has the talent to succeed if he does get the opportunity.
And Peyton Barber looks good, too. I mean, just because he caught one ball, dads catch a ball if you go play backyard football. You know what I mean? Like, my dad catches all of them. But, like a normal dad, he can catch one every once in a while. Peyton Barber, man, I'm not excited. I've got him outside my top 40 running backs. Tags, who are your guys?
That I'm avoiding? Well, it's funny because so Justin and I would butt heads on this one because I think Ronald Jones is actually talented. I don't think that he's a great pass catcher, that's for sure. And I don't think Peyton Barber is either. So they're in like a crossroad here. And that's why Charles Sims, I think, was going to make the roster. But Jacquizz Rodgers, it's just a mess right now. That offensive line is a joke. Donovan Smith is going to be out the first couple weeks. Ryan Fitzpatrick's going to struggle. They're playing the Saints in week 1. It's just not a great situation. I think Ronald Jones eventually takes that, but he's fallen to the point where I'm okay with him. The ones I'm avoiding personally, I'm not drafting Kareem Hunt where he's going. I think Kareem Hunt going in front of Melvin Gordon and Leonard Fournette is a travesty. I would take a few wide receivers before I would take Kareem Hunt. I'm not saying Kareem Hunt is going to be a bad player, but I'm not drafting him where he's going. If you have a first round pick, don't use it on Kareem Hunt. That's my advice. But Jay Ajayi, that's where Justin and I would bump heads, is that I'm not drafting any Jay Ajayi. I do believe at year end, he's going to be a top 24 running back, but he's going to come with so many headaches. This Eagles offense was in for some regression. And it's not to say that, he's not going to have some positive touchdown regression, even though he had broke a few longer touchdown runs with the Eagles last year when he jumped on with them. But Darren Sproles, the fact that Jay Ajayi wasn't seeing like heavy snaps when Darren Sproles wasn't active, and when Corey Clement wasn't really a household name, the Super Bowl obviously brought him on people's radars a little bit more. I just feel like the snaps, when you're seeing consistently around 28 to 33 snaps, it's going to be impossible for you to make an impact that justifies a third or fourth round pick. That's my take on Ajayi. Again, I think in the year's end, he will finish top 24 because I think he's going to hit that 200 carry mark threshold. But it's just going to be very up and down. And I think Derrick Henry's in a similar situation where it's like they're in timeshares, but Derrick Henry, I think he's a better football player. And I think they both play behind phenomenal offensive lines. So I don't want to knock Henry for his offensive line. So I would actually take Derrick Henry over Jay Ajayi.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's pretty close for me on those two. I don't have many shares of either.
For sure. Yeah. I don't have many shares of either of them either.
No, I will say in Ajayi's defense that I think are you considering at all tags that when he came over mid-season last year, there was a bit of a learning curve in the new offense. I know it's a little easier for a running back to get up to speed, but
then he got more and more and more touches even into the playoffs.
Exactly. His touches went up as the year went on. And we're talking about, you mentioned some of those guys not really being big parts of the offense last year, but LeGarrette Blount was there and they were essentially splitting touches.
But Darren Sproles wasn't, and Darren Sproles plays more than Blount does. That's my concern.
Yeah, I think that they can form. It's gonna be a committee of sorts there. I just think that Ajayi is going to start to get more of that goal line work, which he barely got any last year, in an offense that's going to score a lot.
All right, guys, let's go wide receiver here in Texas. We're going to let you start first. Who are 4 or 5 guys that you're targeting?
Woohoo! I get to start. Starting wide receivers. All right, so Michael Thomas, if you can get him at the start of the second round, like, do it every single friggin' time. Like, Michael Thomas is so underrated. Like, if he had scored 2 more touchdowns last year, he'd be considered a first-round pick. And I am all in on Michael Thomas this year. Love him. I'm buying Chris Hogan wherever I can because behind Rob Gronkowski, there is absolutely no one that can catch passes down the field. And Julian Edelman's not that guy when he comes back either, guys. So to know that Chris Hogan was the number 7 fantasy wide receiver through 8 weeks with Brandon Cooks in the roster, with Rob Gronkowski healthy, that kind of tells me all I need to know that where his upside is. He has legit wide receiver 1 upside, but you're getting him in like the 5th round. I also, I find myself drafting a lot of Amari Cooper. And, guys, I understand he burned you last year. And I understand he's not going to live up to the expectations that I even placed on him when he came out as a rookie. I think part of that has to do with Derek Carr and the fact that he's just an inconsistent quarterback. But Amari Cooper, under John Gruden, he's been talking about him and the Sterling Sharp, the role that Sterling Sharp played in the Packers that had him over 1,100 yards essentially every single season, and that Amari Cooper he's going to catch 100 balls. I'm not placing those expectations. I think it's still going to be a little bit volatile, but where Amari Cooper is being drafted, he's being drafted around guys that don't have the ceiling that Amari Cooper does. So I would much prefer Amari Cooper to someone like Demaryius Thomas. And like, honestly, Amari, I think, may have surpassed him in ADP recently.
He did.
But I think that's deservedly so.
Yeah, it's actually up to Amari Cooper's going wide receiver 14. Demaryius Thomas going wide receiver 20.
He's moved up a lot because Amari, I was getting him as the wide receiver 17, 18 for a long time. And I'm glad that, like I said, I mean, Amari is extremely talented. I think the situation is a little bit less than ideal with Derek Carr. But again, a lot of wide receivers in that range, there's a lot of question marks. I mean, if someone told me, they're like, Mike, Justin, I'm going to ask you this question, okay? So I've recently admitted I'm an apologist to Tyreek Hill fans. Okay. So I can no longer like just say, okay, this kid's very good. Like, he's obviously better than I thought he was going to be. I'm still worried about the target share. Like, will he see more than the targets that he had last year? Because if he doesn't get more targets than that, it's going to be really difficult to him to live up to a top 10 wide receiver. But with Amari Cooper, where it's like he should be locked into 130, 140 targets, which one of these two would you draft and why?
I have Hill above him. I like them both. I like them both a lot, actually, this year. I was pleased to see. I thought going into the preseason, a lot of people were talking about Watkins, that Watkins could even outproduce Hill this year. And I see the talent there. Like, Watkins is definitely a talented receiver, but I didn't totally understand it. A new receiver coming to that team. I thought Hill really came on last year, really started to establish himself not as just that big play, circus kind of threat, but he started to come on more as a receiver, like you mentioned. And I think going to this year in the preseason, we saw that Mahomes has eyes for Hill, and he doesn't have a lot of chemistry with Watkins yet. Now, maybe as the season goes on, that'll improve, but I like Hill a lot. I think he's a borderline wide receiver one, and I think we're seeing a guy that is developing, that is starting, they're really featuring him, and he is starting to develop those skills that he can do a lot in the offense. And when it comes to fantasy, we know those big plays, those touchdowns, those are week winners and potentially league winners.
All right, Justin. So who are some of your names or tags? Did you have a few more you wanted to share?
No, those are the ones that I wanted to make sure I hit on. I do like Doug Baldwin a lot, guys, and if you could get him in the 4th round, I'm still good with that. But at the same time, I do understand that there is some risk with this whole knee injury business.
Yeah. All right, Justin, who are some of the guys you're getting a lot or want to get a lot?
First off, I love that Tags was naming most of the receivers that I have on the Dynasty team in that Fantasy Pros League. It was very nice of him. Thank you for just reading off my list of receivers. That was great. Stephon Diggs, you can get him in the 3rd round. The chemistry, we're talking about, like Watson and Mahomes playing together for the first time and the chemistry not being there. There was some concern that with Cousins coming over, who was he going to have chemistry with in the preseason? It certainly looked like him and Diggs are gelling. The only thing that's held Diggs back so far has been health concerns. And if he stays healthy, big breakout coming there, I think. Tyreek, obviously another guy, like I mentioned, to get borderline wide receiver 1 numbers in the 3rd round, I'll take that all day long. Hogan, love Hogan, like Tags mentioned. I'd take him in the 4th round. I feel like I might even consider taking him at the end of the 3rd round. Like, I just think that he's going to have a huge year. I don't see how that path for him doesn't result in big production. They just don't have anybody else unless you want to bet on Philip Dorsett or something like that, which
Cordarrelle Patterson for the win.
Exactly. Those guys are going to pop off certain weeks, but if you're looking for that consistent production, Hogan is their number 1 receiver. Robbie Anderson, we'll have to see what happens. I know it came out that the league's still looking at his situation, so there might be a short suspension still there, but he's a guy, put up top 20 receiver numbers last year in fantasy. And, with the switch to Darnold, in theory, Darnold's probably a better quarterback than Josh McCown. I know McCown's the veteran, and I just think, that could be an upgrade at quarterback there. And Anderson is the most talented receiver by far on that team. And the one that is shocking to me, I'm still, everywhere I go, I'm just asking people how this is still possible. The Kenny Stills going in the 10th round. It's insanity how that hasn't increased at some point here. Jarvis Landry's gone. Stills has been a top 30 fantasy receiver over the last 2 years. It feels like someone's like playing a joke on me every time I see his ADP. It's like they're just waiting for me to like snap when I look at it I don't know. It seems very strange. Do you guys have an answer why that's still the case?
No.
Tannehill played really good with Devontae Parker, like he's always done that. And Kenny Stills, if I'm not mistaken, in 2016 when he put up a lot of his numbers were with Matt Moore under center. So I don't know if it's the quarterback thing. And like Kenny Stills, the reason that I feel like there's a mix in between, right? His ADP shouldn't be in the 10th round, but I feel like some analysts are higher on him than they should be because I personally don't believe that Kenny Stills has a 125 target situation, like in the realm of possibilities. I just don't think that the Dolphins view Kenny Stills as that player, because if they did, he would have gotten him over the last 2 years instead of giving all those targets to Jarvis Landry, instead of giving more targets to Devontae Parker when he's on the field, instead of going out and spending money, like big money, on Danny Amendola and Albert Wilson. So I just don't think that they're in love with Kenny Stills. I think they like him as a player, and I do too. I think Kenny Stills is underrated as a football player, but I don't think that they view him as a alpha dog where it's like I don't think he has top 24 wide receiver in his realm of possibilities because of the situation, because I don't see him getting to that target number. But again, I also believe he's underrated as a player and as a fantasy asset. It's just there's a middle ground here.
Yeah.
I mean, 15 touchdowns the last 2 years. I know you're saying some of the production came with Matt Moore. 9 touchdowns 2 years ago. Like that, it's not just, the long plays that he's getting. He can score, and they look to him in the red zone. I'm not really that worried about Parker anymore. I just don't, I think you still like Parker, right?
I like Parker more than still.
I still like Parker. Yeah, I still think Parker is talented.
Yeah, I don't. I think he's talented. I just think he's one of those guys where it's not coming together for him, and I don't know the will and the injury in the preseason. I could see him really this being the year where we finally realize it's not going to happen for him.
Last 16 games he played with Tannehill, he was a top 20 wide receiver.
Yeah. And that was with Jarvis Landry on the roster.
Yeah, I mean, he has to be able to catch the ball first. He has a broken finger or something like that. But okay, guys, here's my wide receivers, and really, there's not too much. Like I find myself consistently getting one of these top 8 guys with AJ Green, Devontae Adams, Keenan Allen, Michael Thomas, someone in the second round. I really like Stephon Diggs at where he's going. Doug Baldwin. I've got lots of shares. Amari Cooper. I've got plenty. I get a ton of Larry Fitzgerald, and it's not that I love him above his ADP. He just always seems to be there. And that's how it is at wide receiver. Like, there's only really one guy that I really want to get, and it's Corey Davis. I think Corey Davis could be a monster this year. And I think he's got a nice, safe floor, too, because of how many targets he's going to get. Yeah, I like Chris Hogan above his ADP as well. I've got some shares of Josh Gordon lately. It's just whoever falls. Marvin Jones, Brandon Cooks. I've got shares of them all. I really trust a few later guys to be my wide receiver 3 or flex, like Jamison Crowder, Kelvin Benjamin, Sterling Shepard. I've got lots of shares of those guys, and in a lot of cases, it's my wide receiver 3, 4, and 5 there. So my wide receivers are a lot different this year, but mostly it's because I trust the guys that I'm going to have on my bench, and we'll get to those in a second. But first, we need to go to tight ends. Justin, why don't you start us off with the tight ends that you like this year?
Give me all the Trey Burton that I can get.
Yeah, buddy.
No, I want all the Trey Burton. I'm not giving it to you.
I took him in like the 7th round in some drafts. I think that's where he's going ADP wise now. It was a little bit later. You were getting more of a discount before the preseason. Then he went out and had that one game where they just seemed to target him exclusively the whole drive and ended up with a touchdown. Burton, in that offense, Trubisky seems to like him. Ideally, you want a tight end. The best case scenario is a tight end that could be the number 1 option on his team. I think it's possible. We saw that in Nagy's offense with Kelsey for a while there. I think Burton has that kind of upside this season. So.
And a great floor.
Yeah. If I don't get one of the top guys, and, I tend not to, sometimes I'll grab Gronk, but I haven't ended up with that much Kelsey or Ertz. Burton's the guy as often as I can get him.
Let's say you're in a draft with me and I snipe you on Burton. Then what do you do?
Another guy, there's a couple other guys after Burton that I like as well. I like Njoku. I think I like what we saw in the preseason from him. I know he got a little bit of an injury there, nothing too serious. And catching a touchdown from both quarterbacks was also nice because Tyrod Taylor favors his tight ends. We know that. But if Baker ends up getting in there at some point, little worried that, is he also going to look to the tight end as much? It was nice to see him throw a touchdown to Njoku as well. And just one of the most physically gifted tight ends maybe that we've ever seen. Like Njoku's just a phenomenal talent. And he's someone that I think because of the Burtons and, another guy, Kittle, that I like, I think some of those guys have sort of overshadowed Njoku as potential breakout candidates this year. I also really liked Hayden Hurst, but now he's hurt.
Yeah, texted too.
Yeah, the Ravens always throw to their tight ends. I thought he was going to get a lot of targets. He's a guy I'm going to be...
A feature role.
Yeah, I'm going to be looking at him on the waiver wire when he's coming back from his injury. That's a guy I think people should be targeting as well.
Tags and I are a little bit worried about the Njoku target share. I like Kittle's potential target share based on what Garoppolo did with the tight ends in those 5 weeks. But Njoku's they've got so many mouths to feed in Cleveland. Tyrod's not going to throw the ball that much. Now, I love his, skill set, of course. Everyone has to. But I'm just a little worried about that. You're right, though. Tyrod does throw to tight ends. Charles Clay, in the 8 weeks he started, had the 3rd best target share in football. Not for tight ends, for everyone, behind Antonio Brown and DeAndre Hopkins, and then Charles Clay. So, I don't know. Njoku, I guess he's got some upside. I'm a Trey Burton guy, and if I don't get Trey Burton, I'm all about Jack Doyle. I love Jack Doyle. I've got some Jordan Reed shares too, but it's one of those 3 guys if I don't get Gronk in the top 20. Tags, where are you?
Yep, it's Gronk or Burton Reed or bust.
Okay, no Jack Doyle?
If I don't get one of those 3, I'm going to be pissed.
Yeah.
Serious. No, I'm dead serious too. Like I kid you not. I did a live mock draft on our live stream, and I don't know if they did it to troll me, but our listeners, man, I swear, I was like, oh, like when you have this point, you're like, oh, there's 4 picks in front of me. These guys have tight ends. I know I'm going to get one of these guys. and somebody took their second tight end. I was like, you got to be friggin' kidding me.
Yeah, I mean, this has been happening in the 8th round. If you don't take that tight end you want in the 7th, there might be 3 or 4 of them left. They're all going to be gone by the time it gets back to you. Just take your guy and just suck it up and reach one round. You have to do it or you're screwed.
But it's tough because like Sony Michel will fall there sometimes, and I'm like, Sony Michel or Trey Burton, how do I do?
I know, me too, man. It's so tough. I've been burned on this so many times. That's why we do mock drafts, right? And you can do mock drafts on Draft Wizard, which you can do mock drafts in 5 minutes with custom settings, your league types, everything like that. It's going to grade your draft at the end. I've done at least 200 of these mock drafts. And I keep doing this stupid thing where I wait on tight end and get burned. Then I end up with freaking O.J. Howard at tight end, and I hate myself. So don't do that. Just take your guy early.
Good call.
All right. You know what? We didn't talk about wide receivers we were fading. I'm sorry for being a little disorganized, but I want to go back to that because there's a couple important pieces I want to mention. My first guy is Adam Thielen. I'm definitely fading him. Demaryius Thomas, Juju Smith-Schuster. Those are really the big 3 for me. I'm a little bit worried about T.Y. Hilton. I just don't know. So I don't have shares of him. But Thielen is the really big one. Demaryius Thomas, Juju Smith-Schuster. Tags, who are your guys?
Yeah, Adam Thielen's on my list as well. T.Y. Hilton is on my list. He even with luck, guys, he's only been a wide receiver 2 or better 43% of the time of his career. So he's been a very boomer bust receiver, and knowing that Luck might have issues throwing the ball downfield is an issue for me. Alshon Jeffrey's on my do not draft list because, well, obvious reasons.
Oh, I forgot about him because he's so worthless in my opinion in fantasy this year. But yes,
yeah, Will Fuller is being drafted way higher than he should be. He's being drafted as a top 30 wide receiver. I don't have him in my top 40. I understand it's within the realm of possibilities, but don't draft players at their ceiling.
The average expert has him at 38. His ADP is 30. Average expert has him at 38. I've got him at 51.
For me, I'm not overly excited about Mike Evans this year. I think, he's not going to have Jameis at the start of the year. And there's just a lot of other mouths to feed in that offense. A lot of guys are coming on. I think Godwin's going to have a great season. And I worry that target share is just not going to be there for Evans as much anymore.
You look at Mike Evans' last 3 seasons. How many times has he been a top 20 wide receiver? Just once. It was the one year where he was awesome, caught all those touchdowns. Everyone thinks he's a lock to be top 10. Guys, he doesn't do it most of the time, so I don't know. Justin, do you have any other wide receivers you're fading?
Yeah, I agree with the Demaryius Thomas one, especially with Cortland Sutton coming on, and we don't totally know what Keenum's going to bring. He hasn't looked that great from what we've seen so far, so it's going to be an upgrade, but how much of an upgrade is yet to be determined. And I'm not just saying that because I love Chad Kelly. I'll admit that. I do love Chad Kelly, but I'm not just saying that to try to hype Chad Kelly. And Allen Robinson is another one that I just don't know. Another receiver on a new team, and, we just haven't seen it yet, and a little bit worried that some other guys, I really like Anthony Miller, as we mentioned with Burton. So Robinson, we have, yet to really know what he's going to be in that offense. Has a chance to be good, but is also a little bit risky where he's going.
Last time he played 16 games, he was the wide receiver 28. I think that probably comes up, but new offense, quarterback who's, got Trey Burton, he's got Tariq Cohen, all these guys to pass to. Anthony Miller. I've got Allen Robinson 26, which I know is quite low. ECR has him at 18, but he's another guy, I guess, that, I'm fading. All right, so any tight ends you guys are fading? For me, definitely Jimmy Graham and Evan Ingram. I actually almost got my first Evan Ingram share last night in like the 10th round, and I was like, okay, sure. Because all the other guys were gone. It was either him or, like O.J. Howard. So, yeah, I almost got Evan Ingram, and then I didn't.
I'm avoiding Greg Olsen.
Okay.
And I don't know if anybody else realizes this, but it's just, him and Christian McCaffrey, I don't think they can coexist as top 12 options. I don't. And the reason is I even went back because I used this stat on the show before where it's like no running back tight end duo in the NFL last year saw more than 185 targets. When McCaffrey had 113 last year, it's like, okay, are we really going to top out Greg Olsen at 70 targets? So then I went back to 2016 to see if it was like a 1-year anomaly thing, and it wasn't. There was no tight end running back duo to hit over 185 targets. So when McCaffrey, even if we dial him back to 100 targets, you're looking at 85 target max for Greg Olsen. And by the way, his catch rate with Cam Newton is not great over his career. Greg Olsen has never been a high touchdown scorer. So the appeal with Greg Olsen, he's a back end tight end 1 still. I have him. I think I'm going to finish with ranking him as my number 9 tight end. And I know some people might be like, what are you talking about? But when you do all the math, it's just, it's risk reward, right?
Yeah. I've got Ingram 9, Graham 10, Greg Olsen 7, so I don't blame you so much. I just really love those three guys, Trey Burton, Jordan Reed, Jack Doyle, and even Kyle Rudolph. I want to mention about Jimmy Graham, because we've said this before, but there's a lot of new people listening to the show just for their drafts this weekend. You have to get 10 touchdowns out of Jimmy Graham, otherwise he's going to be worthless, because he's not going to get the yards. First-year pass catchers don't do well in this Green Bay offense. Aaron Rodgers doesn't throw to tight ends. He's had Martellus Bennett before, and he didn't do anything. He's had plenty of guys that are solid, and he just doesn't throw to them very much. So you better get those 10 touchdowns, and that's with a guy with 2 substantial injuries in his past that are probably still bothering him. I'm not interested. Justin, who are some guys you're fading?
I agree with you guys on a bunch of these. I think the one thing with Graham, when you look at his touchdown upside, we've seen outside of the top guys that get the yards and the touchdowns, we've seen that touchdown total really swing where a tight end finishes in fantasy. So if he does get into that 8, range or more touchdowns, I think Graham will probably end up as a mid-range tight end 1. So I'm not as concerned about him. Olsen, definitely worrisome, the foot injury, all the other mouths to feed there. Ingram, I'm not going anywhere near target shares. He's not going to get the volume that he got last year. It's not even close. And, concussions are a tough thing to deal with, but suffered a concussion the preseason, had a concussion last year. That's, going down a bad path there as well for him. So those guys those two definitely are guys that I'm staying away from.
Okay, so for this next segment, we're going to go complete rapid fire, like no analysis. We're just going to name the 4 backup running backs that we would have on our ideal team. Tags, I'll let you start here.
All right, so it would be Aaron Jones, Bilal Powell, James White, and TJ Yeldon.
TJ Yeldon, okay. Oh, those are way different than my names. Justin, who are yours?
Aaron Jones, agreed. Matt Breida, Latavius Murray, and John Kelly.
John Kelly, I love John Kelly. John Kelly's definitely on my list. I've got John Kelly, Jordan Wilkins, James Conner, Adrian Peterson, and that's if you don't count Marlon Mack as a backup. Like, he'll be on my bench, but I'm getting shares of Marlon Mack at where he's going right now. Okay, so same thing for wide receiver. Let's go 4 of them again. Tags, your first.
All right, so Sterling Shepard, number 1 on the list. Like, I think he could be a starter, but you're getting him in a backup range. Geronimo Allison, Anthony Miller, and, it's so hard to pick the other one. I guess I'll go Mike Williams.
So hard because there's not so many you like, or there are so many you like?
Oh, no, there's so many late round wide receivers.
There's so many, agreed. There's so many.
I know. Name the other 2 then, Tags.
All right, so the other ones I had in here, Ryan Grant, I think is a good one, and John Ross and James Washington.
That was 3. You don't get to say James Washington.
Okay, he's crossed off.
Okay, Justin, who are your guys?
I'd scoop up all those guys that Tag said too. Chris Godwin, who I mentioned before, Anthony Miller, Kenny Golladay, John Brown, Michael Gallup. I think Michael Gallup, a month or maybe 2 into the season, Michael Gallup's going to be the number 1 receiver in Dallas.
I think so too. I think a lot of people are going to drop him though, because I don't think he will be at the start. Okay, here's my names. Again, Sterling Shepard if he falls, Devontae Parker if he falls, but I don't really consider those guys benches. I'm getting these guys in every single team. Geronimo Allison, Keelan Cole, Chris Godwin. Lock it in. They're on my team, definitely. I also love John Brown. I love John Ross, Ryan Grant, as mentioned. Those are my 6. So we have a lot of crossover here. I mean, these are all not just high upside guys, but in like Geronimo Allison's case, Chris Godwin, Keelan Cole, my big 3, I think those guys are pretty safe as well.
Yeah.
And with so many guys on that list, perhaps the thing to take away from it is maybe you don't need to reach for any of them. You can just sit and wait, and whoever from that list falls to you, grab them at a value.
Yeah, I'm cool with getting all 3 of those guys, Allison, Cole, Godwin, in rounds 10, 11, 12, and just having my wide receiver 4, 5, 6 there. You're going to get 2 starters out of those 3, I bet. And the reason we're not saying backup quarterbacks and tight ends is because this is the general draft strategy part. We're all going to give 1 tip. My tip is don't draft a backup quarterback or a backup tight end. You're just clogging up your roster. You're probably going to end up streaming those positions anyway, and there's just no value in these backups. There is value in having a James Conner or a John Kelly in that if their starter goes down, they're running back 1s every single week. So you want as many of those backup high upside running backs and high upside wide receivers as you can get. And they're not the backup wide receivers. They're the guys like Chris Godwin, who could just jump forward and be studs all of a sudden. Justin, what is your 1 general strategy tip?
I mean, there's so many that I think are important, but if I had to nail it down to 1, it's one that I've definitely applied this year. And that's stay balanced early in the draft. I know people like going 0 RB or, I've even seen 0 wide receiver this year with how deep receiver is. I don't want to do that. I don't ever want to pin myself into a corner where I feel like I have to address a position. So I like to stay balanced and get, at least one running back, at least one receiver in those first 3 or 4 picks, because then I think it allows you to take value where it falls and you don't have to feel compelled to, like I said, address one position. And if you do, the other very important one that I would mention with that is if you do decide to go, a tight end early, I would never recommend QB early, but if you do decide to go tight end early, then you cannot address quarterback until later in the draft. You cannot do a early tight end and an early quarterback. That is just going to sink your team, I think.
Correct.
Tags, what's yours, man?
Mine is, there's a lot of them, but I'm just going to go with this one because I enjoy it. We play fantasy to win, right? Draft players who you want to put in your lineup, not boring ones who will, end quote, win you 4th place, because Isaiah Crowell is that player.
Yeah, there's lots of guys like that as well. Go for the upside, especially on your bench. I guess that's a second tip, but you know what? I had to say it, so. Hey guys, if you want a recap of this, obviously you can go back and listen to the show or slow it down and write down these names, but I've got an article that's coming out on Friday. By the time you listen to this, it's probably going to be Friday. Just, you can go to our homepage. It's Bobby Sylvester's cheat sheet for friends and family, or you can just Google Bobby Sylvester Friends. It'll be the first thing that comes up. And, how weird is that you type in Bobby Sylvester Friends and it's a fantasy football article? But
that's your friend.
Yeah, that is my friend, I guess. But anyway, you can get a recap of all the guys I named on this show. Tags, are you re-releasing your article for that too?
I don't know if we're releasing. I mean, I put it out last week, so you guys can check it out. It's just under Tags Fantasy Football Draft Cheat Sheet. So it kind of lists all the players that I'm targeting, avoiding, and the rounds that you should be targeting those players.
All right, guys. Well, that's all for today's episode. We went a little bit long, but it was worth it. Everyone's got their drafts this weekend. So, Justin, thanks for sticking around, and thank you for taking the time to come on the show.
Hey guys, I appreciate you having me. It's obviously a busy time of year. If anyone's looking for my stuff, you can get me at Justin Boone on Twitter. You can check out theScore's Fantasy Football Draft Kit. We update it daily. It's totally free. So you can check that out. And we just started a new podcast, the Score Fantasy Football Podcast, and we are actually going to have Tags on next week. So definitely check that out.
Yup.
And remember, guys, we've got our signed David Johnson jersey giveaway going on right now thanks to pristineauction.com, where you can get anything for your man cave. They've got so many signed jerseys and helmets that they give away every day for good prices. Everything's guaranteed authentic from the most trusted sources. And thanks also to teamstake.com, where they've got safe and secure transactions, fully customizable payment collection and payout distribution system. And don't forget to sign up for the live mock draft that we're going to be doing on youtube.com/fantasypros. If you want to sign up, go to fantasypros.com/mock draft. We're going to be picking a couple guys and drafting Friday at 2 o'clock Eastern Time PM. For Mike Tagliere, I'm Bobby Sylvester. Thanks for listening and enjoy your football.
I just wanted you to watch me dissolve.